Out of curiosity, are there any fans of Rosemary's Baby in the room? Yeah? Okay. I love that movie. A movie that I love even more is The Last Unicorn. Anybody a fan of The Last Unicorn? Yeah? Anybody grow up on The Last Unicorn, wearing out a tape of it? Yeah? Okay. That's kind of the story with all of us, right? We will get some incredibly candid and lovely stories from one of my heroes and one of, I'm sure, yours. But to show her the proper welcome that only Torontonians can give, we have to find a way to blow the roof off this place at 11 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Do you think we can do that? Hold on. Do you think that we can do that, Toronto? I need just a little bit more, because we weren't quite there. I know our coffee's just kicking in. Mine's only just hitting me, like I just went from 0 to 60 in 12 seconds. Toronto, can we bring our hero, our legend, the magnificent, the one, the only Mia Farrow onto the stage, everybody? Okay, that's more like it. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only Mia Farrow. Keep it going, come on.
Thank you, everybody, for such a lovely welcome. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, we just love that you're doing conventions now. This is something I mentioned to you when you were with us in Dallas. That was your first one.
And this could be my last.
Why?
I don't know. I'm just, thinking I'm complete.
Well, I mean, let me say this. The thing about doing these conventions is when it is someone of your stature, people go, Wait a minute, Mia Farrow was at the con? How did I not know? She's doing cons now? I've got to see her the next time. So if you really love Mia, you've got to tell them when they put the survey out that you want to see her back, and that 12 of your friends want to see her back. What has it been like meeting these fans, coming up to your table in Dallas here? What kinds of stories are you hearing that are surprising you?
It's been so moving. Yesterday, a lady came up to my table, and she had brought her ukulele. And I was wearing a T-shirt with the unicorn on it. And on Amazon, you can get a T-shirt with the unicorn, and it says "The Last Unicorn." And she started to play the song from The Last Unicorn, and the tears fell from her eyes, and she had just a beautiful Joni Mitchell caliber voice, and had me in tears, And she just said how much it had meant to her and everything. And for me to hear that, because I don't get that kind of, where am I going to get it? At the supermarket, that kind of feedback, and hardly anybody brings up the movie. I live way in the country in Connecticut, in rural Connecticut. Everybody's known me forever there. I've been there for 30 years. So, everyone said everything to me a long time ago. So it's just a revelation to come, and that woman just being one of so many who were so kind, kind enough to wait, as people do, for me to sign their photograph or object. I signed the top of a baby carriage. So me from Rosemary's Baby. I thought, oh my goodness. And every time I sign a Rosemary's Baby photograph, I put a little heart, because almost all the photographs that we brought have a knife in them. And my mother, being born in Ireland, always said, never give a knife as a gift. It'll bring bad luck to the people. And I was like, so I put the heart to ward off the bad luck or the evil. And I'm sure it works.
So many of us in this room are fans of The Last Unicorn. We grew up in The Last Unicorn. What were you a fan of growing up? What were you into? What fascinated and captivated your imagination?
Well, when I grew up, there wasn't a lot on TV. And my father was John Farrow, and he was a movie director. And my mother was Maureen O'Sullivan, and she was a great movie star of her era. And she did, oh my gosh, she was the Jane in the original Johnny Weissmuller Tarzan movies. She played opposite Greta Garbo in Never, and she was in Pride and Prejudice, and she was in all these, Day at the Races with the Marx Brothers, all these, wonderful old films. So we lived in Beverly Hills, and they had their screening room. So they would show us Shirley Temple movies and The Little Rascals, which were from way back, even way before me. So I grew up loving Shirley Temple, who was by then into her second marriage and long grown up, and The Little Rascals. They weren't children anymore, because we're talking, I think they made those movies in the 30s. But so that's what we were shown, and we were allowed to watch a little television, and it was the Mickey Mouse Club and Superman. Those are the ones that I loved. Yeah.
What was it that you loved about Superman?
I wanted to be Superman.
Well, good news, you are. You're all of our superheroes.
I just couldn't figure it out. I went into my mother's closet, and my mother had the movie star closet, and I looked at all the dresses and the shoes and the contraptions that women wore underneath at the time, and I just thought, I'm never going to make it. This isn't going to happen for me. I just couldn't picture wearing the shoes, the girdles, the whole paraphernalia was so not me. And I'm so lucky that here I am, and I'm still in jeans and a t-shirt, and I'm still a girl and happy to be a woman, And but at that time it was overwhelming. I thought, good thing they didn't let me, change my gender at that time, because it seemed to me that the only way through life would be to be a man, to be a boy. Because all my heroes, Peter Pan, all of the good stuff and all the things that I wanted to be were being done by, my brothers were in the Little League, I wasn't allowed to be in that. It wasn't a good time to imagine being a woman,
And to want to be non-conforming when it came to gender roles.
I wanted to be a superhero.
Yeah.
So I didn't see women
at the time. Women in the comic books, they were, the Lois Lane's comic was Superman's girlfriend, right. Lois Lane.
No, I didn't want to be Lois Lane. God bless her. I wanted to be Superman, So, anyway, here I am.
Well, it's one of the things that I find so wonderful and inspiring about you is, not to get political, but you mentioned dressing the way that you want, and it makes me think of Elizabeth Warren, actually.
Yeah.
Someone who, for your entire career, we've known you as someone who is her own thing, does her own thing, has her own way of looking and being, and that's one of the reasons that so many people consider you, a style icon, and someone to look up to as standing up for yourself and what you want to be and who you want to be. How early did you want to, I guess in a way, follow in Mom's footsteps as an actor? Were you interested from an early age in doing that? Is it something that came to you later?
It came to me later. I wanted to be a bunch of things that kids want to be. The fireman, the pilot. That's when I would pray to be a boy. And I wanted, then as I got older, I wanted to be a nun. I thought that's really the only place for me. I'm trouble.
You get to study all day. People leave you alone.
It was just like I wanted to do something that was on a high level of, I don't know, consciousness, or I was very religious at the time, so that's how it was. And then I wanted to be a doctor, and I wanted to work in Africa. I had seen an old movie called The Nun Story, and I thought, that's for me. I'm gonna be a doctor, and I'll go to countries where they don't have doctors or not enough, and that's what I'll do. And then I didn't do any of those things. My father died, and not to make it a sad story or a sob story of any kind, but my father died when I was 17, and my brother had died before that when I was 13, and my Irish family fell into kind of disarray, and my father couldn't work, and then my mother started working, but on Broadway in New York, so I joined my mother in New York, and just for the heck of it, the woman playing her daughter in the play she was in was going for an audition. So I went along just, to see what that was like. And what chutzpah, I found myself auditioning. And I got the part. And it was in a play called The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde.
And who did you play?
I played Cecily, and I had at the time an English accent because I'd been at school in England, and that began. Agents came, and next thing you know, a career happened, in front of me, and I was in it.
Are there roles like Cecily and The Importance of Being Earnest that particularly stick with you over time, that mean a lot to you, that you have good feelings, good sentiment attached to, that are kind of warm, fuzzy things to look back on?
Well, oddly, the warm, fuzziest of the films was Rosemary's Baby, though warm and fuzzy may not come to mind for anybody else. For me, it was not only gave me my entrance really into films, and a measure of credibility and maybe even respect, because I got good reviews for that. And I knew I was just lucky because a lot of people had turned it down. I know they had offered. I know one person they'd offered it to who would have been great, and it was Jane Fonda, and she was much more the Omaha farm girl of 27 years old described in the book, and I was not the Omaha farm girl of anybody's imagination, I think, but I eventually got the part. It would have been a different movie, but it would have been a really good movie. I mean, Jane Fonda, and it was also offered to Robert Redford to play the John Cassavetes. Did any of you see that movie, Rosemary's Baby? Can you? Mm-hmm. So you see why I was so lucky to get that part. It was such a great part. And now you can imagine it with Jane Fonda and Robert Redford. It would have been, of course, excellent. But I'm so glad they didn't do it, Oh my gosh. And I was 20 when I started it, so I was like way younger. And the warm and fuzzy part came from the duration of the movie, which was about 6 months of my life. And I was in every shot, or every scene anyway. I wasn't in the naked shot, because I just, as I said, I went to convent schools and nuns, and I just couldn't. They tried to persuade me. There's a devil rape scene, and when you see a girl's body being painted by those diabolical neighbors, that body was not mine. Just saying.
For the historical record.
It was another girl. She was 18 years old, and I said, isn't this hard for you? She goes, no, they think it's you. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Everyone will think it's you. And I'm like, that's true. Anyway, and the fuzzy part came from making movies is, in my experience, is being part of a team. And I'm a team player, so I loved being part of that team and getting to work every morning and saying hi to everybody, and almost everybody was named Bill. So it was just really easy to say hi to everybody, and I was accepted as part of the team, so I felt wonderful about that.
Well, there are a lot of Last Unicorn fans in the room too. We spoke about this in Dallas. It's kind of taken you by surprise, it seems, that there is this really deeply founded love and affection for this film. It means so much to people, and people have such personal stories about what it's meant to them. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like making it?
Well, I didn't know that people felt like that about The Last Unicorn until I went to Dallas, and this is my second event of this kind. So we were together in Dallas, and it was then that I understood that this meant a great deal to some people. I feel honored, and it actually knocked my socks off, because I just hadn't thought about that film. It's a cartoon, and when I made it, I was doing a Broadway play, and I was invited to be part of the cast, and it was on a Monday. I remember that because I wasn't working later, because I got to go out to dinner afterward. And then we were all of the cast in a semicircle, and there was Jeff Bridges, and there was Alan Arkin, and there was
René
Auberjonois, and Alan
Christopher
Arkin.
Lee.
Christopher Lee. That's right. And all these, and Tammy Grimes. There were all these wonderful actors, and we all sat in a semicircle with a microphone like this, but we had that on us, a lectern in front of us, and everybody just read their parts. And then it was over within 2 hours, and we sang, I sang the song, and then we all went to dinner and had a great deal to drink. And that's what I remember, like how fun it was and to be there with all those people. And it wasn't like maybe it is nowadays where you go in a studio and everybody has a separate experience. We were doing this.
I mean, it sounds almost like you went and did a radio play, and then you went out to dinner and drinks with everybody afterward.
Yeah. And my ex-husband was there, and he took me out. I mean, we thought we were going out to dinner, and everybody said, well, can we come? And suddenly it was this wonderful group of people all having dinner together, having made this beautiful little cartoon that we never, I can't speak for anybody else, but I never imagined, that all these years later that I would be even thinking about it, let alone talking about it, In
Dallas, you had someone cosplaying as Schmendrick come up to you. What was it like seeing someone bringing to life one of the characters from this animated film?
It was an oh my gosh moment, like what's happening? How did this happen? Like the lady who played her guitar, and I'm saying she also had a huge unicorn tattoo on her arm, like that covered like all of her upper arm. So the extent to which some people are committed to that film, I really am going to have to look at it again, because I obviously would find something that I didn't really grasp,
This panel brought to you by Amazon.com, where you can get Last Unicorn t-shirts, Last Unicorn DVDs and Blu-rays to your heart's content.
I have to do that.
Now, there's another legendary bit of artistic work that you were indirectly a part of, and that's the tapestry of the Beatles' music. What was it like being you and your sister being in the mix, hanging out with these guys as they were making some of the great music that to this day, we just had this movie yesterday come out about what happened. What happens if the world didn't have the Beatles' music and was just being introduced to it now?
How much poorer my own song thing would be, I mean, what great music. It was a great time for musicians anyway, if you think about it, because you have to juxtapose that with the war in Vietnam, so there was this kind of critical thinking of, we could all be dead tomorrow. I mean, it was a draft in the U.S., and people were dying, and people were struggling to end a war that nobody could understand, so it was a very intense time, and out of that time we had, yes, the Beatles, and they got more and more serious, from, I Love You to deeper and deeper songs, and there was Bob Dylan, and then there was Joan Baez, and then you had Joni Mitchell and Leonard Cohen, of course, from here, and the Beach Boys, and you had the Mamas and the Papas. You just had, and you had so many great songs. Eric Clapton, all these, the Rolling Stones, these musicians all were coming out, and it was a thrilling time. But going back to Rosemary's Baby, I had just finished that, and in the process of making that, my husband left me because the film took too long, and I didn't leave, and he said, leave the film or I leave you. It was really a horrible thing. And in those days, I don't know, I think men were just considered to be, the breadwinner, and their work was just more important than women's work, and thankfully times have changed, but anyway, that's the way it was, and anyway, he did leave me, and I was absolutely heartbroken and not knowing what to do or where to go, because it was his house, I had to go somewhere. Meanwhile, on another coast, on the East Coast, my sister Prudence was going through mired in some nightmare of her own, and she was a meditator, and I was not. And she said, let's go to India. The Maharishi is having this seminar, and we'll go to the Himalayas, and you'll pay for it, and I'll go with you. Okay? Okay, sounds good. Well, what is it? So we go to India, and we go to this ashram in the Himalayas, and it was freezing cold. I just finished Rosemary's Baby and got through Christmas, the holidays somehow, so it was January. We get there, she immediately goes into meditating. And people that were really serious meditators, and as I said, it was the Himalayas. It was really, really cold. People wrapped in blankets, not talking, saying Jai Guru Dev, I go, hi, I'm from LA, bless you, And I just was trying to meditate. But I have a little ADHD, I must admit. So I was just trying hard to meditate, maybe trying too hard and not getting anywhere. So I'm there for a month, and Prudence is in her room, and I'm really lonely, and it's bleak, and everybody's meditating, and I'm trying. And all of a sudden, the Beatles arrived. And things picked up, I gotta say.
You're saying the Beatles brought a party with them? I'm shocked.
All four of them arrived with their wives and or the girlfriends. And, Paul McCartney was with Jane Asher. John was with Cynthia, his wife then. And George was with Patty Harrison, his then girlfriend. And Ringo was with his wife then, Maureen. And Ringo left after about a week. They didn't like the flies, and they, like me, they weren't so into the meditating. George was big time into the meditating. John was really interested in the trippiness of the whole thing, I think. And Paul, Paul was there. I mean, we were there and we were trying. But this whole idea of meditating for 12 hours totally eluded me. Like, it was just too long. And so they were, at the same time, they were playing their music. And my sister, everybody got assigned to another person. It was like the buddy system, because it was the 60s, and people were meditating and going through like bad experiences of their lives, of their childhoods, their whatevers. And, people would be crying and whatever. So they had their buddies. And Prudy's buddy was John Lennon. And he was fat. She will not tell me any of the buddy stuff, but they would talk for hours, and finally she would just shove him out and get back to meditating. And every once in a while, I would put her food outside and it would be gone, but I, wouldn't talk to her. She didn't want to talk. She just wanted to meditate. And she just said, they're really nice, these Beatles, but I wish they would be quiet. and they were writing the White Album, the whole White Album. That Bungalow Bill was a real person, and he arrived, like, they had been there, we'd all been together, like, so it was my end of month 2 for me. But month 2 was Beatles had arrived, so as I said, things had picked up. And these people arrived with like leopard skin luggage, and unlike us, we were living in like barracks. They got their whole hut to themselves, and then they got bored, so they went out tiger hunting. Thus the song Bungalow Bill. Bill and his mom wanted to kill a tiger, so off they went, and the Beatles wrote the song Bungalow Bill. So there's a story behind each song, and all the children sing, and that was the children there at the ashram. Hey, Bungalow Bill, what did you kill, Bungalow Bill? And when they left, they wrote the song Dear Prudence for my sister Prudence, because she wouldn't come out and play.
It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Now, I told you back in Dallas, one of my favorite bits of your work is called Ronan Farrow, one of our great journalists who's doing incredible work, yes, brave work, that his publications don't necessarily always stand up for him, but he always manages to find a publication that will. I don't even know quite how to phrase this, how to articulate it. How has it been watching him grow into the man that he is, who stands up for people who don't have other people standing up for them, and stands up for things that very powerful interests do not want him to have an opinion about? Right.
Well, he was brought up by a single mom, that'd be me, and I think he has an innate sense of justice, wanting fairness for everyone, and my family is comprised of, 10 of the children are adopted from various places from America's inner cities, but also from different places, and I adopted them because of their disabilities, because they were older and not necessarily, certainly not on anyone's wish list. they had been available for adoption, some of them for many, many years. Others were not. They were in institutions, not in any orphanage. So he understood the inequities of life, the injustices of life, and how we need to help each other through. He understood that at an early age from I believe, from his brothers and sisters. But his own mental abilities were in evidence really early. I mean, he was reading before he was 3, and he went to university at 11. And I drove him every day and brought him home every day. I mean, because, an 11-year-old you can't leave alone. And he loved it, And I saw him when I was going to pick up. He was leaving one of his first classes, and he went and hugged the teacher. And she distanced herself, and she said, "Ronan, we shake hands here." And I thought, he's a baby. And he would do his work, his tests. He would, how little kids climb on the table to do their writing, or they do it on the floor with, their knees tucked under their chin. That's how he liked to do his homework and writing. So I came in and watched him do his exam, and he was on a table with his knees under his chin doing the exam. He graduated first in his class, and he was admitted to Yale Law School. And he took 2 years off to be a speechwriter for John Kerry, and then went to Yale Law School, was a lawyer before he could drink, and then didn't like practicing law and went into the State Department. I think a sense of service was what I hope I gave him. And then, he wanted to do journalism, and he was working with one of our networks, MSNBC, and he was doing this story on Harvey Weinstein, who's a really bad guy. I have no problem saying that. And the networks, basically, the long story, his book about this is coming out in October, and I can't do it all in detail, but he wanted to pursue this story, and they ordered him to drop it. And they said it really wasn't much of a story that anybody would be interested in, and he didn't really have enough for them to run it, blah, blah, blah. And so he took it to the New Yorker and ran it in 3 separate hunks of horrifying material and riveting in its own awful way, for which he won the Pulitzer Prize. And now he also won a Polk and all kinds of awards. One recently he was given, and people came up and gushed about their bosses at their networks and how grateful they were for their employment in their networks. And Ronan had his thing prepared, and he looked around and he said, I see here a lot of people who lied to me, who lied to the public, and I feel it's really important for journalists, I have to paraphrase, to be truth tellers. And let's be transparent and truthful. And people were just gasped, because it was a room where everybody was like, "Thank you for this award, and I'd like to thank my this and my that, and I couldn't have done it without my this and that." And he just, he
dropped all of the pretense in the room
Ronan.
simultaneously.
He just said, "I see people here who lied, and a litany of lies." So I'm super proud of him, of course. I know he gave a talk here in Toronto. Did anybody here go? You did? Okay. Well, then you get who Ronan is. Yeah.
I've got one more for you, and then I want to turn it over to the audience.
Okay.
You mentioned the dedication to the notion of service being an important thing. It's something that was inculcated in you from an early age. We're both Americans. Again, there's political, and I think there's socially responsible. Yeah. When people look to your example of the kind of social good work that you've done, the kind of activism work that you have done, as an example, sometimes they maybe feel a little bit lost. They think, oh, maybe there's a little bit of imposter syndrome. How do I go out there? How do I make myself useful?
Just don't look to my example in choice of boyfriends.
Well, what advice would you give us, those of us who want to go out there and do something good, affect positive change, maybe get involved politically? I think everybody has a different path, right?
Yeah.
But what advice would you give?
Well, I would begin with saying, our gift is that we are given a life, and and unless it's in immediate danger, then I think with that gift comes obligations, and that we need to be part of the solutions in a troubled world. There isn't a neighborhood, at least in America, where there are people that couldn't use a hand. And I don't mean necessarily money. If you have extra money, it's easy to find out. There's a website called Charity Navigator that tells just how much of the dollar you give actually gets to the cause that you care about. So never give unless you check charitynavigator.com. But look in your own neighborhoods, in your own cities, and see where the need is, and see what speaks to you. Like, you all have your gifts, your personal abilities to connect with people in the ways that each of you do individually. You want to use those gifts to help other people, because your gift is time. And when we all lay down to die, that's the one thing you can't have more of. So while you have time, consider it a gift. And with that gift, it comes with suffering, because that's part of life. You can't have one without the other, and we accept the suffering. And hopefully it makes us more empathic, that we feel everybody's going through some suffering right now. Everybody. There isn't anyone who isn't dealing with some battle right now. Everyone in this room, and everyone you know, and everyone you pass on the street. And therefore, show the kindness that they deserve, and then find a way to help somebody. And if if it's outside of this country, God knows there's a world of woes outside of this country. And if it's in this country, it's probably easier to find. And if you can do both, then God bless you. It makes you feel, and your children and your grandchildren, if they know that, they can start at a very early age. As Anne Frank said, I want to paraphrase Anne Frank, but something like how wonderful it is that we don't have to wait to grow up to do something good. And we don't. And we see that in little Greta Thunberg, who's crossing the ocean to help us all realize how urgent the climate change issue is. How Malala, at such a young age, was able to demonstrate to everybody such courage and wisdom. How the Kielburger brothers here, Canadians, were able to build so many schools and change so many lives. So there's a lot. So I think that in going through, I'll just say my teens, I felt completely worthless, and I thought, I'll be an actor, I was 17, that's what I'll do, and then I'll be important. And I realized, no, the way to feel that you have significance is to find that way to help people. And then you feel, when you go to bed that night, it's been a worthwhile day. That's what I've learned. I'm just passing it on.
Isn't that beautiful? I think we've got time for a couple of quick questions, if we can get them in. Go for it right here.
Hi.
I have a question about The Great Gatsby. So in school that was a required reading that we had here.
Beautiful book.
It's a beautiful book. And so Robert Redford and Sam Waterston.
Beautiful men.
Yeah. So I was wondering, how do you prepare for a character like Daisy Buchanan? Like, iconic character.
For those in the back, questions about making The Great Gatsby, what it's like preparing to play a character like Daisy Buchanan.
Well, that was a hard character because she was such a vessel, so empty. She hadn't at that point in her life evolved into being more than pretty, a pretty toy for the men that she wanted to play with or, be in their lives in some way. And she was a sad character. I felt I was undermined by when I got to we shot like 2 weeks in Newport, and then the rest was at our studio in England, Pinewood. And so we all arrived in Newport, and I had done a screen test they had asked for that and they had chosen me for the part. And the wig in the screen test was really good. It was very natural and it moved and everything. And I got to Newport, and the wig had been bleached blonde that didn't move at all. And I know this sounds silly, but it just looked and felt like a wig the whole time, and I felt it undermined some of the look I wanted to have for Daisy. I wanted her curls to shake, and I wanted her hair to be real, not like she had just come from the beauty parlor, and I just couldn't ever get that look. The other thing was, it was during the Watergate hearings, so Robert Redford, who is very political, I wasn't at the time, more so I am now. But,
a little bit, just a touch.
I have to be now, but he was watching the Watergate hearings, all the time. Like sometimes he just wouldn't show up in the set for long, long periods of time, which I'd never experienced anyone who wasn't like punctual. So, and he would invite me in to watch the Watergate hearings with him, and riveting as they were. I was like, shouldn't we get back to work? People are waiting. Nicer guy you couldn't find, by the way, and a great kisser and everything. We had a kiss. It was lovely, and we had a dance, and he's a good dancer too. And I'm very, very, very fond of him. But then I was pregnant during the movie. That was the other thing, and I got so nauseous that my goal for Daisy was not to throw up on her clothes, honestly. Because they had these beautiful gossamer clothes, and I just got more and more nauseous as my pregnancy came on. And, weirdly, the poster to Great Gatsby was taken after the movie, shortly before I gave birth to my son Fletcher. I don't know why they didn't, maybe it was before Adobe Photoshop, but they could have done something. What you see is a titanically pregnant belly in the poster, which is otherwise, a very beautiful poster, but I just couldn't believe they didn't spot that, how
it kind of stands out, just a little.
I have it in my house just because I gave it to Fletcher. Like, there you are, honey. Big as the moon.
If we go real quick, I think we can do two more. Go for it.
What do you know about Roman Polanski at your age?
Well, Rosemary's Baby.
Did you see Rosemary's Baby?
I have not yet, but I'm a big more fan.
Okay. I think you should probably wait till you're like 16 to see it, because it's very scary. And working with Roman Polanski, I've got to say, was a wonderful experience for me. He's the best director I've ever worked with. And at that time, he was very much in love with his wife, Sharon Tate, who became my friend. And, honey, she met a terrible end, worse than any horror story. And that, of course, is something I can't get out of my mind. Dear friend. They took me in when my husband left me, and I had nowhere to go. Sharon and Roman kind of took care of me. So I'm grateful for that. That he is a flawed human being, and he made a terrible error in judgment. I think we can all agree on that. He had a very rough life. Not that his parents died in the camps, and in the Holocaust, and he had a rough upbringing, and his wife died in that way. And I don't think that excuses him, but it kind of explains him a little bit. People ask me about him. If I include on my Instagram a picture where Roman is directing, I get a lot of hate on me, like, ew, get the pedophile out of the picture. And he wasn't then. It was an age-appropriate woman with a man. He was 34, she was 26 or something. There was nothing inappropriate. He was 33, I think he was, during the movie. And he was a wonderful director, and it was by far the best role I've ever been given in the best film I've ever made, in my view.
They tell me we've got to wrap up, but what I'll say is that, Mia, you take an uncommonly generous amount of time with your fans at your table, and just seeing you interacting with them, shaking people's hands, listening so intently and taking in their whole person that they're giving to you is something that it's not just because of what your resume says that makes you unique. in this convention world. Just the way that you deal with people and see them as human beings is so lovely. And I hope that we can find a way to convince you to keep doing these shows so that people can come back and bring new generations of kids that they're raising on cartoons, that they're holding until they're 16 before they show them Rosemary's Baby. What can we do to convince you to keep coming and hanging out with your fellow nerds? Because you're a Star Wars fan. You stand for Arya Stark on Game of Thrones.
Of course I do. Of course I do. She's my hero.
Well, you're our hero.
Thank you. No, I mean, people have been so kind, and as far as seeing people, I can't see people any other way than, another soul, not unlike mine, all in their own struggle, like we talked about before. And, God bless everybody. And if there is no God, bless you anyway. I hope there is, but nobody can say for sure.
Now, you're here the rest of the day? Yes?
I am here the rest of the day.
Do you have photo ops later?
I don't know.
Yes. So we've got she's got photo ops later. If you haven't signed up for a photo op, go over to Epic, get a photo op with Mia. If you've seen her at her table, if we didn't get to your question, usually we do a little bit more audience Q&A, but I hope this format worked for everybody. I hope this was one of those kinds of once in a lifetime experiences you only get at Fan Expo. I hope I've done my job right. They put a survey out. If I did my job right, if I didn't do my job right, make sure to tell them, but especially tell them that you want Mia Farrow back, because this is something that we're going to be telling people about for years.
I want to thank each and every one of you for coming into this room and for caring about what I would have to say about anything. Just thank you. Thank you.
One more time, let's blow the roof off this place. Mia Farrow, everybody.